Welcome to the Ladies Finance Club podcast. I'm your host, Briony Benjamin, and I am thrilled that you're here with me today to talk all things money. Because let's face it, the world of finance can kind of feel overwhelming, a little bit male, pale, stale. But if you can get on top of your money, and we know you can, it will pay off big time. We're going to be chatting to the best experts in the country about how to build wealth and get on top of your money game so you can become financially fierce. It's easier than you think. Let's go get those dollar bills, y'all. Are you someone who's good at setting goals? If you're not, maybe it's just because you don't have the right process in place. I speak to Briony Benjamin on today's episode all about how to become a goal getter, and she talks to us through her awesome process about how she sets goals. You also might hear some similarities in our voice. Briony is my sister, but she's also an international speaker, author, and viral video maker.
Oh, well, thank you. I love it.
Before we kick off, Bride, for those people who might not be aware of you and your story and your recent book you brought out, can you give us the Briony Benjamin elevator pitch?
Well, my biggest claim to fame is that I'm Molly's big sister, and I've known you for a long, long time.
Yes.
And I'm also the president of the Molly Benjamin fan club, along with your twin sister.
Oh, stop it.
But yeah, we grew up in a family of 3 girls, and I did actually a commerce degree majoring in finance to begin with, of all the things. And then I've been hugely passionate about the environment and climate change all my life. And so I thought, I don't think my calling is to be a carbon accountant, but I think it's to go back to film school and learn like how to communicate biggest issues in the world, but using humor and joy and bring people along on the journey. So I re-enrolled in film school. In the interim, started a speech and drama school, which you were one of my wonderful teachers in.
I was always like, I'm favorite employee / only employee.
Yeah, and at that time, this is when you were not obviously amazing with money like you are now, and you used to be like, so can I just get a prepayment on my next 4 weeks of teaching?
I think college was definitely my low point when it came to finance. It was
the high point of fun, but the low point of
my
finances.
bank account. I was just always on zero, and that was just so normal. And I was like, oh my God, what was I thinking? I could have saved so much money.
I know, but it goes to show it's inspiring to know you can turn it around as well.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't matter where you are now or where you start.
Okay, back to you, Bryce.
Yes. So then did a film degree, started working in the purpose-led space doing impact production, which I loved. Got a job as head of video at Mamamia there for a time. It's super fun, making all these viral videos, had this amazing team, but I just felt awful all the time. Doctors kept telling me to rest, meditate, tidy my room, clean my space.
They said you had a stress issue, didn't they, at one point?
Yeah, they're like, it's just stress. And it turns out it wasn't just stress. It was actually, unfortunately, stage 4 cancer. By the time we got it, riddled with lymphoma all through my body, in my bones. It had gone down everywhere. And so that meant literally putting life on hold, starting an aggressive course of chemotherapy, moving home to the Gold Coast. You came home from England to look after me and be with me every step of the way in that first period, which was amazing. You got really good at massaging because I always had a really sore neck. Molly's a really good masseuse now.
I was like Briony's temperature and water gal, because if her temperature went over a certain amount when you're going through chemo, it means you have an infection and you've got to get to like the hospital ASAP. So poor Bri, I was like every 2 seconds I was like,
yeah, you were like, I'm here with your thermometer, and you make me breakfast every morning and
boiled egg toast.
Yeah, boiled egg and toast. I had a very specific regime. Because like weirdly, just heaps of stuff during chemo, you're just like, can't even eat it anymore.
But then we documented the whole thing.
Yeah, and like encouraged by you and Mum and some of my friends at the time, just said, just start capturing this from day one. And I really didn't feel like it, to be honest. I love content creating. I love making videos. But the day you get diagnosed with cancer, like it's obviously just this huge whirlwind. It's a huge shock. And I was like, no, I don't want to. And it was actually Roger, my partner at the time, who was like, nah, go up to your room and do it if you can. I think it would be really good. And so I documented it. It turned into this video called You Only Get One Life. When I shared with my beautiful, at the time, boss, Mia Friedman, she was like, I love this. Let's get it up on Mamamia. And so kindly, because she did that, it went out and went viral in the world. And then off the back of that, it led to a book deal. So a publisher reached out and said, would love to just turn this into a helpful guidebook for anyone navigating a tough time. Oh, there's one now.
So for those who are listening, I've got a copy of Briony's book in my hands. For those who are watching the video, you can see it.
Yeah. And that has been, I've got to say, one of the greatest privileges of my life to put that book out into the world. And on a weekly basis, I will get the most beautiful message from someone who's either going through cancer or a divorce or like has just lost someone really important in their life. And to hear people reach out and just say, I can't tell you how much this book has helped me.
Yeah, and that's what it is, isn't it? It's like a bit of a guide for when life throws you a curveball. Because
Yeah.
we'll get curveballs in our life at some point, and it's a really good guide and helpful tools and things that helped you in your journey.
Totally. And because, that imposter syndrome did kick in a bit when I first got the book deal. I was like, oh, I'm not a psychologist. Who am I right to write this? But then I thought, well, actually, all the most helpful things that got me through the experience were from people that had been there and done that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know there's obviously a completely different topic, but they say with business, don't take advice from someone who's never run a business. It's almost like it's hard to take advice from someone who hasn't been through it,
been there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
But, Bri, you're also amazing at setting goals.
What am I amazing at? Do tell me.
You are. Well, I think you're
complimentary.
And for those LFC members and followers, Bri's run a few webinars and kind of courses with us on how to actually set goals. And so I thought it'd be really helpful, as I said, I want to make it super practical to actually talk about goal setting. But I thought maybe before we even begin, B, and not trying to set off on a negative step, but I think it's a really helpful thing. Like, why do sometimes the goals we set fail?
Yeah, a lot of reasons. But I think firstly, I know I did this for years. Like, since I was a kid, I was such a cool kid, as you know.
Yeah, making your paper. And
I was like, recycled paper making on
she
weekends.
She started an environment club at school. That is cool.
That is cool. I was legit cool.
I know.
I was cool before it was cool.
Yeah, you were cool before it was cool.
To be into climate. No, but what most people do, I think, and what I used to always do is you'd write your goals down at the start of the year. You might get a bit reflective on New Year's Eve or in the lead up, and then you write them somewhere in a diary, and then you kind of forget where they are, and that's it. Yeah. And then you check in with them December the next year, and you're like, oh, I haven't really achieved any of those goals. So we don't put any systems in place.
No.
We're not seeing them. We forget what they are. But I think the biggest thing, and what we'll talk about today, is there's no system in place to follow up on it, to keep yourself accountable, any of that sort of stuff. So that makes it basically impossible. I think some of the other things, we set goals that are too big. So we're like overly ambitious. I know I do this. I set way too many and they're really big, and then you feel disheartened.
And I feel like people do this with money goals as well, with financial goals. They say, I'm going to buy a house next year. But maybe more realistic would be in 5 years' time. Okay, how much do I need to be putting away? Or even other goals like I'm never going to order Uber Eats again, or I'm never going to catch an Uber. And it's like, well, that's just a bit
realistic.
Of a big goal. That's not realistic in this day and age.
Yeah, and so I think we go from zero to hero, and we haven't got any, and then we set these giant ones, and then we feel demoralized when they don't come off. I think sometimes too, the big one is they're just too vague. I want to save money. I want to be fitter than I've ever been before. But there's no benchmark for any of those things. There's nothing to track it towards. So then we just give up because, well, what's the point?
And that's something we see in kind of New Year's resolutions. And I hear a lot of women go, this year I'm going to save more money. And I'm like, how much? What for? Why? Let's get really specific about that. Because if you're saving $10,000 for your emergency fund so you never have to be reliant on a family member or partner, that's a lot more specific than just being like, I want to save some money.
Yeah. And then I think the underlying thing is what's your mindset all around this? Do you actually deep down believe that you can achieve these goals? And I think often we write these goals, but maybe we haven't addressed, and our friend Courtney Mangan talks about this, you haven't addressed the underlying beliefs. And so that's a really important part of it as well.
So what are some other reasons goals sometimes fail?
Look, I think they're the main ones. No system. They're too vague. They're too big, but we don't have a clear why. And are these our goals or are these someone else's goals? Yeah. And I think if a goal doesn't actually truly resonate with something, and you should sort of know, I think when you write the goal down or you think about it, does it light you up and excite you, or does it feel like a chore? I think that's a good guide. How do you feel about the goal when you talk about it or think about it?
Yeah. And I think another reason is sometimes we don't see change, so we give up with our goals as well.
Yeah, we give up way too early. And so that's about having a system, but knowing that anything that's worth accomplishing is going to take time. It's not going to be and I think that is the thing, isn't it? New Year's rolls around, we might gym it up for 2-3 weeks, and then we're like, oh, I'm not seeing any results. Yeah. So you give up. So this is about, how do we think about them in more of a long-term way, but give ourselves short-term goals to get to the big one.
What's that Tony Robbins quote?
Yeah, I think he says like we overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, actually when you look back on the distance of time, we can get through a lot more than we think we can.
Yeah, and our mentor Dale Beaumont shares this quote with us from Alice in Wonderland that we really like. You be the Cheshire Cat.
Okay, I knew you'd want to be Alice.
What road do I take?
Well, where are you going?
I don't know.
Then it doesn't matter. If you don't know where you are going, any road will get you there.
Oh, boom, dang. I remember
Boom,
when I
mic
first
drop.
heard that. I was like, oh, of course, it's so obvious.
It's like you're just directionless, really.
Yeah.
If you don't really know where you're going, like it doesn't matter which way.
And Tony Robbins also, I'm fangirling over Tony this morning, but he also talks about the Niagara syndrome.
Niagara Falls syndrome.
Yeah, Niagara Falls syndrome, where, we get caught up, we're kind of in a boat going down the river, and we get caught up in current things like, so we want to buy, mobile here, car there, but we're not making active choices. So when we get to a fork in the river, we just go with the flow.
Yeah. And even not just money choices. Hey, like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll just like move in with this person, or like I'll just, things are happening to you rather than you actively thinking about what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And then he's like, you get to the end, like you get to the drop, and there will be some kind of fall, whether it be a financial fall, an emotional fall.
Cancer,
exactly.
The point being then you're just reactively responding to the situation, is
Yeah, you haven't chosen the path. You've just kind of been completely
you're like,
taken
I'm going off the cliff
with your surroundings and your environment at the time. So when we are looking at goals, I know there's always like the corporate spiel. They're always like, make your goals smart.
Make them smart.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got really dumb goals. How do I make my goals smart? But if you're listening, you may well know this, but I think it's worth recapping.
Yeah.
They need to be smart, S, specific, M, measurable, A, attainable, R, realistic, and T, time bound. So rather than saying, and Mol, you might want to give a financial example here, rather than saying, I wanted to save money and be good with money this year.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, it might be like, I want to save $10,000 into my emergency fund by December 2023, or I want to pay off my credit card debt or my buy now, pay later debt by February 2023. I need to put X amount away each month.
Yeah.
So getting really specific.
Yeah. So the first thing is to make it specific, and then we can talk in a minute about then breaking that into the manageable chunks, right? But yeah.
Yeah, and you did a one around your health and well-being, because that was a big goal for you this year.
Yeah, and I need to probably, to be honest, make that smarter myself, because I didn't want to put too much pressure on myself, because as I've been, navigating chronic fatigue over the years, as you know, I get excited, I do too much, and then I like flog myself, and then I feel exhausted with my fitness. So rather than putting a really specific thing around that for me, I have made it my number one goal though always. So like when I write out my goals and my priorities now, health and well-being is always the first goal. And I break that down. What does that mean? And it means moving my body every day, like walking and stretching every day. So I'm not setting any because, I did the classic me thing last year, and I was like, I'm going to run a half marathon in like 3 months' time, and I made myself sick after 2 weeks. So that for me is like, how do I set something that's attainable? It's not actually probably that measurable, that one, but it is measurable in that I could like, okay, I've moved my body today, I've gone for a walk, I've done some yoga,
Right. So a quick little thing I guess we can do before we actually even set our goals is just have a check-in with our previous year's goals as well.
Yeah, so I like to always start, you do this at the start of the year, and then we'll talk later about you do this every quarter as well in the year. I think it's really lovely to set aside a couple of hours at the end of the year. I like to do it in sort of like early December, mid-December, because then I feel like I've got a heads up start on the year. I'm not like racing to do it once January comes. But it's really nice to think about how the year went before. And there's a few questions that I like to go through. But the first one is, what were my goals last year and did I achieve them? And you might be sitting in that position at the end of this year. You might be thinking, I actually can't remember what they were.
Or I didn't set any.
Or I didn't set any, or I don't even know where I put them. And that's pretty telling that, well, you don't have a system in place to help support your goals. So don't be hard on yourself, but it just means, okay, let's think about a better way to set up for this year. Yeah. So start with that goal list from last year. Did you achieve them? What didn't you achieve? Did you make progress on them? If you didn't achieve them, are you a bit closer towards anyway? Have a really, clear think about that. And then the next thing I like to think about was, what was my biggest success for the year? And what also was the biggest failure for the year. This doesn't have to be earth-shattering goals. Like for me, it might be things like I'm bad on my phone. I'm totally addicted to it, but I'm really good at not having my phone in my bedroom at night. I leave it in the kitchen or the bathroom, charging somewhere out of my room. So it's not the last thing I'm doing at night. So I've got time for reading, and it's not the first thing I do in the morning. So it might be something like that. What worked well was having more time for reading. What worked well was I really enjoyed squash this year, and I've been playing, once a week, and that was good to feel well. So yeah, it can be the big and the little things for that. What could I improve?
Yeah.
So it's like I could have better systems in place for achieving my goals. I might want to be thinking more about my spending in this coming year. Then how do I feel about last year?
Yeah.
Because remember when we sat down and did this for the first time?
Yeah. I was not a happy chappy. I'd moved back from the UK and I was just
you were
a bit
missing all
like,
your friends.
yeah, and I was like, well, that's really clear for the next year. I don't want to be feeling this way.
Yeah, you were like, oh, how do I feel about this year? Like, oh. But I must say, I've done this with a friend before, right? And they were like, oh, like it's been such a bad year and it's been so hard and it's been awful. And then what we did is we went through his phone and we made an album of all the memories throughout the year that he'd taken photos of. And when he actually broke the year down and reflected on it, he was like, oh my God, this year was amazing. So there's a gratitude piece in there as well, I think. But that might be a sign to you that like, oh, okay, I need to think about cultivating a better gratitude practice here because I'm actually not even aware of how good my own life is in the scheme of things. But just have an overarching sense. Like you can be like, how would I describe last year? How do I feel about it? Do I just feel like, bleh? Yeah. Do I feel like, yeah, it was okay? Do I feel like, oh my God, it was an amazing, exhilarating year?
Yeah.
And it's just good to as a benchmark then for the coming year.
And then the last question, what were your happiest and most joyful moments? And this is, again, a really nice one to reflect on. I know when I first did it, I actually had to think really hard about this. And I realized
I think you almost felt like crying, actually, didn't you?
because I was actually quite sad that I couldn't think of a joyful moment.
We were laughing about it, actually, because you were like, this is a bit sad that
I think I was like hanging out with my dog.
Yeah.
Was my most joyful moment.
I mean, to be fair, pretty joyful.
And I think with this exercise as well, it's really helpful if you can do it with a friend as well. Because I know sometimes I just need a bit of accountability, but I also someone to bounce ideas off. So someone who knows you well, who's been kind of around that year with you.
And probably later this year, I'm actually going to do one as well. I'm going to do an online one and people can come on and do it maybe, in December. So keep tuned for that.
Awesome. And I think also when you're reflecting on that, it's a nice time just to check in with your net worth again. So for those ladies listening who might not be sure of how to actually do your net worth, that's where you list out kind of all your assets. So we're talking your super, your cash in the bank, we're talking if you have a car, what that car would be worth today, not when you bought it. Again, likewise, if you have a property, it's how much that house is valued, not what your mortgage or loan is, because after you've written out all your assets, you then write out all your liabilities, so money you owe. So it might be, what is the actual mortgage on that property? If you have a car loan, what that loan is, credit card debt, any kinds of debts in there, student loans, things like that, and popping those all in. And we have an Excel at Ladies Finance Club that you can download for free on our resource page. And that as well kind of gives you a number. And that is what you are worth on paper. It's not what you are worth. It's not your self-worth.
No.
So it's really, really important to note that. But you also want to see that number go up over time.
Yeah. So you do your review and then you like to do a snapshot of your net wealth. So assets minus your liabilities.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've reflected on our previous goals. We know our net worth. What's the next bit we do?
Yeah, so now it's about just setting goals for the new year. And how I like to start is just to do a big brain dump, put some nice music on, like you said, get together with some girlfriends or your partner or whoever, and just set aside some time just to dream and think, and what do I really want to do with my life this year? And what do I want to put my energies into? And I like to just start with a big brain dump and you can condense it from there. But some of the categories might be financial goals, personal development goals. Are there new skills I want to learn this year or improve? Are there new habits that I want to instill? Relationships. I never used to make goals around relationships. And in the last year I did. And it's made a total massive impact on my life because it puts it as a focus area.
And you are in a very nice relationship now too.
I am. Funny, where focus goes, energy flows, as our mate Tony Robbins says. But, what do you want for a romantic partnership, your family, your friends? It doesn't have to just be a romantic relationship. It can be about what kind of family member you want to be, what sort of friend you want to be. I think it's important to make goals around those, not just, things you
Yeah.
want to achieve. And then obviously work, career and business goals. What projects do you want to work on? Do you want to set some financial targets around that? Health and fitness goals.
Yeah.
What do you want for your body? How do you want to eat? How do you want to exercise? Then obviously emotional and mental health goals. Like I think it's nice to think about, how do I actually want to feel most of the time this year?
Yeah.
Like how do I want to change course from last year? What makes me feel good? What makes me smile? What are the things that top me up? Time. So thinking about, what does an ideal day or week look like?
I love that question. Like, what is my ideal morning?
Yes.
And I did that a couple of weeks ago. I was working with a goal setting coach, Ange, and she was awesome. But I hadn't actually really thought about it that much. And I realized actually it's to get up, go for a run along the beach. And I'm very, lucky that I'm now in Bondi. But this was actually before I lived in Bondi.
Yeah, same.
And I said, I want to get up, I want to go to the beach, and then I'd love to, have a coffee, do some meditation, write journal, and then start my day. And then I realized, well, what's stopping me? I can move to the beach.
Yeah.
I can do that walk if I want.
Yeah. So we've got the beach down and the walk down. And now I know for me, I've got to work on the other things because I just struggle in the mornings a bit.
Yeah. But you've had chronic fatigue. So.
Yeah, that's all right. We can get there though.
Yeah,
dream morning for me would be like waking up, journaling with a candle and a cup of tea, going for a walk on the beach, having a swim, coming back, starting the day. Yeah.
Mine's minus the swim, but I'll get there.
Yeah.
I'll join the swim.
Queenslanders. We are Queenslanders. And then, a goal around contribution and community, I think is nice as well. How do I want to give back this year? How much of percentage of my income do I want to give to causes I'm passionate about? I know for me, one of the groups I've joined is called Groundswell Giving, and it's a climate action giving circle, and 100% of the funds that you give go directly to people doing the most important, impactful climate frontlines work in Australia. They're amazing. So for me, that was an easy thing to go, well, I might not have the time or the energy right now, but I can give money to the thing.
Yeah. What I love that my girlfriend does as well is she puts money aside each month, and that's her giving money. And then she would decide what charity. So if a friend's running a marathon, or if there's a project that needs funding that she's really passionate about, she just will then kind of nominate what charity she donates to.
I love that too, because you're making space for it and you're being intentional about it, rather than being like, oh, I've got to give money to that. Oh, I've got to give money to that. It's like turns it into a joyful thing. You're like, oh, I've set aside money for this. Like, what can I spend it on? Yeah, that's cool. And then fun and holidays as well. What great experiences do I want to have this year? What trips do I want to go on? Because that's going to help you set goals around it. And rather than just, once again, Niagara falling it.
So I just want to recap on those topics again for those who are listening and taking notes. So suggested categories of where you can make goals: financial goals, personal development, relationships, work, career, business, health and fitness, emotional, mental health, time, how you want to spend your time, contribution, community, fun, and holidays.
Yeah.
So what do we do once we've brain dumped kind of the goals we want to do?
So then it's just about finessing, and I think it's good to pick what is the one goal of the year. And then for me, I always like to have more than one. But if you're if nothing else this year, what's the one thing I want to get out of this year? Particularly if you've got a lot on and you've got you've got a job, you've got family, you're juggling lots of things. I mean, if you just had one big goal you wanted to accomplish, what would it be this year? Personally, I picked about 3 to 5.
Can you share a goal?
As I mentioned, health and well-being is always number one now, because I know all the other goals will flow from that. Whereas I used to always put it 8th or 10th on the list. Do you know what I mean? Be healthy. So that's always number one now. And then I had a goal around a relationship. I wanted to meet someone amazing this year. So I wanted to really put that into the front of my focus. And I kept just reminding myself that I'm going to meet someone amazing.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And that has eventuated. The other one was to write a journal to go with my book.
Yes.
So I've done that. That's going to come out next year. So that's done. And then the other one was a goal around what money I wanted to earn this year.
Yeah. Awesome. My goals were around, I wanted to finish my book, which I've done, run an event at the ASX. It's always just been something that's on the top of my list. So we did that with a drag queen. It was called Investing as in a Drag. It was so much fun. Then the third one was do a roadshow around Australia and go visit regional Australian women and help them get started on their investing journey. And that's all kicking off in October and November. So
kicking some goals there.
Yeah, but they're all very much work goals.
Yeah, they
So,
are work goals.
which means
All right,
the
so we're going to get
personal
some
goals
personal stuff
have-
happening.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it probably reflects in where you're at, right? Like you're kicking all your work goals. So that's great. And that's
But
where you're
maybe
at
I
for
need a
now.
little bit more on the relationship focus now. So you picked your 3 to 5 goals.
Yeah, and then coming back to we were talking about having a system in place. So the year I got my book deal, that felt like a really big and slightly overwhelming goal, seeing as I'd never written a book and I didn't know how to do that. So what I did was I just broke it up into what I thought all the steps would be. So it was like literally as simple as like email my friend who's written a book and ask to do a meeting with him, get the outline for what a book proposal looks like, email my publisher to ask for the book proposal overview, email the proposal to the publisher. And then literally I broke it down into write chapter 1, write chapter 2, write chapter 3. And then by the end I had this list of, say 20 odd points of how to do my book. So I was like, oh, okay, now already that seems, they say, how do you eat an elephant? One mouthful at a time.
How do you drink
Poor elephant.
How do you drink a bowl of Prosecco? One sip at a time.
Okay, that's that works too.
Jokes.
But it then immediately feels more doable and you're energized to do it rather than like, oh God, I've got to write a book. It's like, oh, I've just got to like email this person.
Break it down.
And so then it's about scheduling that out in the year. So I knew January to March, the first quarter, I was like, that's when I'm going to write my proposal. The first quarter is proposal writing time, getting clear on what I want to write. And then the second quarter, I'm going to write the thing. The third quarter, I'm going to edit the thing and do design. And then it was done. And I stuck to that and I did that.
And I realized we just didn't, for people who were listening from the start and they're like, oh, Briony had cancer 4 stage. You were in full remission. Because I know when we've done this before, people have been messaging being like, but what happened?
Yes, sorry. Made a full recovery. And in January next year, I'll be 5 years in remission. Yeah, which is when they say, off you go live your life now. You don't have to keep coming back for tests and getting poked and prodded.
And so for when we're setting big financial goals, especially when it's like, you're saving for a big house deposit or you're saving for your emergency fund, like breaking it down into those small bite-sized chunks makes it so much more doable. Like what sounds, more realistic? I'm going to save like $90,000 for a deposit, or I'm going to save $300 a week for the next X amount of time. So it's just breaking it down. Likewise with an emergency fund, let's say, I want to save $10,000 into my emergency fund by December 2023 or 2024, whenever it is, you'd work out your weekly amount. Okay, I'm going to set up a separate bank account that I'm going to label it my emergency fund or my OMG fund. And then I'm going to set up an automation. So on payday, that money leaves my bank account and goes straight into the emergency fund. And I'm going to check in every quarter and see how that's going. And once it's topped up, I'm going to cancel the payments.
Yeah. And I think also in building in when you're doing these systems is like, what's your reward when you've done it?
Yeah, definitely. How are you going to treat yourself?
It might be as simple as I am going to book in for a nice massage, or I'm going to give myself a spa day, or I'm going to go see this friend that I've been waiting to catch up with and take them for dinner,
And I saw this one on Instagram and I loved it. It was someone who was like, I want to read 1 book per month. And then they broke that down. They said, okay, average book has 300 pages. So let's say if I read approximately 10 pages per day, that would give me a month, 30 days to finish that book.
Yeah, and then you might get a sense of like that takes you 20 minutes. So you're like, okay, I need to work out how to have 20 minutes in my evening. And then obviously the next most important step is to actually print these goals or write them down. Like, to be honest, I don't have a printer. Like never get around to it.
No millennials have a printer.
No one wants to deal with Officeworks print queue, nightmare. So I just write them out. Like better just to have something, write them out, stick them on your wall. But what I've also done now, because I use monday.com like for all of my daily activities.
And for people who don't know what monday.com is, they're project management software online.
So it has my to-do list, right, each day of like, it has all my appointments, my meetings, the things I need to get done for that day. But at the very top, and I got this from Tina Tower actually, because she does this, another one of our mentors, you basically do a little pull-down menu and it has all my affirmations. And then I have all my goals. And so it means I read them every morning. And even better would be to then write them out every day. So Denise Duffield Thomas, who you may know, is an amazing money mindset coach who we love. And she says the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire is a billionaire writes their goals out twice a day. A millionaire only writes them out once a day.
Yeah.
But I mean, just imagine the difference it would make if you had one clear goal for the year and you literally wrote it out every morning. Like you are manifesting that stuff now. Like that you are so wired in to think about that rather than, well, what was my goal?
Your brain is so primed to make that goal happen. It's like they use that example of like when you go to buy a car and you decide which car you want to buy, you'll see it everywhere. You'll see ads for it on TV. You'll see it on the road because your brain is just constantly looking.
Yeah, and it makes it feel doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just something that works for you. Other people might do it as their desktop screensaver. You can do it as your phone screensaver.
That's what I did. I nerded it up.
Yeah.
So every time, because I reach for my phone, 50 times a day. So every time I'm reaching to my phone, I'm seeing my goals and going, ooh, little reminder. Oh, yeah.
Another creative one I like is people make it their password for their computer. So if your thing is like save 10K, I mean, imagine if every time you get logged into your computer, save 10K this year, save 10K this year.
Exclamation, hash, capital letter. So we want to make it password worthy.
Yes.
And what about vision boards, creating a vision board?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I always mean to do but never really get around to be honest. But I have a board with all my favourite people and memories and quotes on it. But I was chatting with a lovely author the other day, Shana Kennedy, and she just brought out a range of vision board kits at Kmart.
Ah, nice.
So that's cool. And they're different themes. Like it's like well-being, wealth.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, you know, because I think the thing that always stops me with the vision board is like I don't have magazines, I don't have the pictures, I don't have the images, I don't have a printer, as we've discussed. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool hack for that. So you can buy one of her vision board kits. Shana Kennedy is her name at Kmart and stuff.
And what we actually did, I think it was about 2 years ago as well, is we got some friends together and we did a big vision board making session. So our friends who do own magazines, they brought over a bunch of magazines. We had tea and coffee.
Yeah, so make a thing of it.
Yeah.
Get a group together.
Yeah.
That's fun. You know, and so we've talked about breaking goals down and then laying them out. But then it's also about creating a system that works for you quarterly, weekly, and daily. And so what that looks like from a quarterly perspective is I think at the start of the year, get your phone out and put in your review dates. So before the end of each quarter, I like to do it like a month out. I go, okay, where am I? Am I on track? How am I looking? So you've given yourself a month buffer to get yourself back on track for the quarter. And then maybe 2 weeks before you do a proper, review, where am I at? Or do it at the very end of that quarter, that's fine. But in that, you do that review process as well that we talked about at the beginning for the whole year. Do that for the last quarter. How do I feel about it? What were the successes? What's working well? What's not? And then reassess for the next quarter. Yeah. And also, like, if the goals that you set at the start of the year are not working out and you're not on track, that's fine. But maybe your goals have shifted and that's okay too. So, you know, this is something our friend Courtney says. You don't want to feel bullied by your goals. No. So if it's changed, that's okay. But then get clear on what being replaced with. Yeah. Then making some weekly guidelines or rules for yourself. That might look like literally I used to just write it out each week and have it on my wall. These are my weekly things I need to do to stay on track with my goals, not just my to-do list of tasks. Because otherwise you just get caught up in the urgent stuff. And then daily I would have a little list where I've got my goals written out the top. And that might look like I've got to write 500 words every day. Or I've got to do my stretches every day and my walk. Yeah. You know, so you're linking a daily system to a weekly system to a quarterly system. And I have a bunch of templates that I use on this that, you know, if people join my Goal Getter community next year.
I think there's also power in like ticking things off a list as well. So even if you want to set that up in like a Google Drive or an Excel, so somewhere where you can find them no matter where you are. So if your computer dies or if you lose your phone, you've still got them there on a G Drive and you can tick them off each day or each week that you've done them.
And you know, Mo, I love the idea of a to-do list instead of a to-do list. So a to-do list is a list of everything you accomplished in that week. And I think it's nice to do on a Friday when you finished. Like I can keep track of it in monday.com, which is what I use. But it's really nice to see, oh, look, these are all the things that I did and accomplished, to make you feel motivated as well.
Even those 2 questions you can ask yourself on a Friday as well, like what am I most proud of this week? What went well? What can I improve?
Yeah, and maybe what I felt grateful for as well.
That's a nice one. All right, we're building these into systems. We're putting them where we can see them all the time.
Yeah.
How often should we be kind of checking in with these?
Yeah, well, I would say daily, but it's really at the start of the week when you're laying out your week. It's scheduling your goals in as well. Is that scheduling in your exercise time, scheduling in your writing time, or if you've got a financial goal, is it scheduling in Friday mornings? I do coffee with myself and I review where I'm at with my savings plan, because if it's not scheduled, it just doesn't happen. And even if you in a week, you are the determinant between someone doing something and not doing something is if they've just committed to a time and written it down. So it's like I've booked in for yoga on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. Don't quote me, but you're way, way, way more likely to do it if you've actually scheduled it as opposed to like, I'm going to do some fitness this week.
As something Dale Beaumont also says, what gets scheduled gets done.
Yeah, so true. And then, I talked about the to-do list, but also I think it's so important to reflect on the things that we have done. And sometimes they weren't on the list and we've accomplished things. I'm definitely someone who writes things down on the to-do list to just cross them out. Yeah. That there's a great app that a friend of ours, Maggie Palmer, who's amazing, created. It's called Pep Talk Her, and it was designed to help women negotiate better salaries. I like to keep track of all my wins in that app, but I also, me, Mo, I take photos wherever I go. Yeah. You're very lucky. You've always got a personal photographer with you.
I love it.
But I keep a little album on my phone, and it's like my amazing year 2022, and I have my word of the year as the title of that album, and I literally at the end of every month I just add all the great best photos and memories and moments. And so if you're having a bit of a flat day or a down day, or you just want to go reflect on all the goodness and richness in your life, I go back through that, and then I often break that into quarters as well. But I think, it means that you also end the year with an album full of all your best photos for the year, which then makes it easy to print off or, put in a photo book or something like that.
And I just want to touch on again with Pep Talk Her. So if you don't have the app, even just like an Excel spreadsheet where on a Friday when you're doing those things, it's like, what are the 3 biggest things I achieved in my work? So especially for those who aren't self-employed or aren't running their own businesses, because that then becomes your list of things you then take into your performance review. So when your boss kind of goes, what have you been doing? You've got a really specific list of absolutely everything that you've been doing for the past 6 months or the past quarter. And you can even impress yourself. You're like, oh yeah, I ran that campaign and I
really
got that
critical.
customer on board and I bought in this much amount of business. So it's really important that you have that, because when you go in to negotiate and that boss says, what have you been up to? You can be so specific. Your boss is busy. They're not going to remember. You're busy. You might not even remember.
And I did this when I was working at Mamamia. I went in for my first sort of 6-monthly review. My boss who loved me and I loved her, she was amazing, but I think was coming in being like, yeah, so, what have you been up to? And nearly fell off her chair when I pulled out this list and showed everything. She's like, how have you done this in these 6 months? But once again, you forget how much you can accomplish over time. But if you're not keeping track of it, no one's keeping track of it for you. You have to be your best advocate.
And this is a little tip we got from Maggie Palmer as well, where on a Friday, and you can do this once a week might be an overkill, but even once a month where you just go, hey, such and such, just wanted to let you know what I've been working on this month, boom, 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 and then just talking about priorities for the next month. And so then one of our members, gorgeous Anna, she was listening to that session. She went and did that with her boss, and her boss was like, wow, that's amazing. And then her boss was like, I'm going to start doing this to my boss.
Yeah.
And so she started this chain of them actually having these check-ins and going, and also, am I on track? Is this what you wanted me to focus on?
And, I have a friend, he's Dutch and he works at Red Bull actually in the Netherlands, but he does this with all of his team, but they do it weekly. So they have to say, this is everything I've done and this is all my focus areas for the next week. And they send it to him on a Friday. It makes you look awesome, but also it gives your boss a chance to be like, oh, actually, that's not the focus area, or it is, and so it's clever.
Thank you so much for sharing all that awesome
Pleasure.
And I think even if you're listening and you don't do everything, but you take elements of that and put it into your own system, that's great. But we have questions that we ask all our guests. And I'm excited to ask you about these.
You probably know them better than I do, but let's do it.
So, where did you grow up?
Well, I was born in Tassie, grew up in the hinterland of the Gold Coast, in a veterinary practice, didn't we? Mum and Dad were running a veterinary practice, so it was lots of fun, lots of animals, mainly us always just being like, can we keep this stray or this rescue Joey or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was cool. Fun. We did have a pet kangaroo for a while. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Wallaby.
It's fun when you meet an American, they're like, do you all have pet kangaroos? We're like, actually, yes.
We did. And did you ever think you would end up in the career you're in?
I mean, I don't know, but it's interesting. I'm moving basically into a speaking career at the moment. And growing up, it was always about performing, presenting, like getting ready for the public speaking competition every year, and debating was like my favorite thing.
Of which you
Very
always
cool.
did very well in as well.
So it's funny that actually I think, the things that light you up as a kid that you love, if you can find your way back to those. And then also with, environment's always been my biggest thing.
Yeah.
I was really blessed to spend the last 9 months working with the amazing Teal independent candidates, supporting them, and, just to have now 6 amazing women in the parliament that care about climate, integrity, gender, and the amazing David Pocock in the Senate. It just feels really good for the country. And so I think, it's funny that actually the things that lit me up as a kid are the things I'm doing now. And when you're doing that too, you meet your people, you meet your tribe, and I really feel like that's happened through this experience.
How do you budget? A bucket, spreadsheet, your head, or an app?
In my head, I know I need some coaching from you. We'll do some money coaching. It's in my head at the moment. Look, I used to do a spreadsheet and have a bit of a sense of it, but I do find it hard at the moment because my income's so ad hoc with different freelance jobs. So, but I know there's ways around that.
Yeah,
so,
and I know
I do need to get better.
A lot of freelancers also feel that. They're like, I find it really hard to budget when I don't know, what is going to be coming in for that month, or it might differ from month to month. So I've got some tips for you for that one.
Right.
Great. But I think
Put me in.
I think that's where, like, if you are someone who likes to use the bucket system, so when you get money in, you split it into those different.
That is what I used to do, and
categories.
I found that really easy when I had a set salary. So now I just need to work out a version that will work for me as a freelancer.
What's a recent purchase you regret?
I know what you think it is, but I don't regret it. Okay. There's this amazing shop in Sydney. It's called Priscilla on Oxford. It's like this fabulous
drag queen
essentially shop. And I went in there to get a mask for a masquerade ball. I was going to spend like $20, and I saw this most amazing leotard. It was like full military, like soldier leotard with like
sequin,
with fully sequined. And the guy was like, it's the last one in the country. And I was like, I have to have it. I was like, how much is it? He's like, $250. I was like, oh, Molly's going to be so judgy about this.
No, I'm
joking.
I'm not judgy.
You're going to be like, what? So I got home and she was like, you did what? I was like, I don't even know what happened. I bought it. But we had a Harry Styles party recently and it was perfect for it. And everyone was like, great outfit. And
they loved it.
I loved it. It made me so happy. And I feel like I will have that for life.
Okay. I hope you do.
So no hashtag no regrets.
Best piece of advice you got about money?
Probably from our mum.
Yeah.
I remember her saying, do what you love and the money will follow.
Thanks, Mum.
Yeah, and that was really good because there was no pressure on, finding a really high-paying job or career. It was like, do the things that you love and it'll work out, which I think has panned out for me.
What about the best piece of advice you wish you had listened to? And it can be about anything.
Can it be something that I did listen to?
Yeah, go.
Okay. Actually, randomly, remember when we were at uni and we did acting? Yes. We had this wonderful teacher called Miriana.
Yeah, Miriana.
And she probably gave me, that piece of advice changed my life when she said, interesting people are interested and they ask questions and
they listen.
And she said, if you want to do anything in life, you need a support crew of people that are backing you and supporting you. And the way to do that is to ask people questions about themselves and then be genuinely interested in the answer. And as someone who, believe it or not, was quite shy growing up and was quite shy even at uni at times, I have learned to be an extrovert, I think. Like, I love it now. I thrive off it. But there was a time when walking into a random group where I didn't know anyone would be terrifying. And now I love it because I realize the secret is you just ask people questions and it's the best. It takes all the pressure off you and you have the best. You learn so much as well.
And I think that's great advice for when you go to a networking event, because a lot of our listeners are they're in the corporate world and they do go to networking sessions. And I used to run like how to actually make the most of a networking session when I was in the UK with some banks. And I was literally like, just ask them questions about themselves and you don't even have to. Also, I think there's this theory, like people are always so worried about what you think of them that they're not thinking about you. So just totally take the pressure off.
But it's so interesting when I do that, I find they probably do 90% of the talking, which is fine because I love learning. And then they'll always say to you, wow, you're such a great conversationalist, which is funny because you're like, well, I actually haven't really been talking, but people love the opportunity to just talk because it's not often that people genuinely ask you questions and are interested. So it's a lovely gift to give to people, I think.
All right, favorite podcasts? or one that you're listening to at the moment?
I mean, your podcast, obviously,
when it comes out.
I mean, I love some political, nerdy podcasts that I listen to each week. I love Tina Towers' podcast. I love Denise Duffield Thomas's podcast, Chill and Prosper. The 7 a.m. podcast is great, but I'm on the hunt for some new ones at the moment.
All right.
Yes.
What are you reading at the moment? And I'm caveating this with the fact that Briony literally has like 20 books by her
So
bed.
many books on the go. I'm reading an amazing Australian historical fiction called Benevolence by Julie Jansen. I'm reading The Dreaming Path, which is about Indigenous thinking to change your life. I'm reading The Dictionary of Lost Things, which is really interesting, like as a fiction book, because I'm trying to read just fiction at night. But as you know, Molly, the book I'm absolutely obsessed with right now is called Glucose Revolution.
Oh my God, she loves it.
And it's all about the order in which you eat your food and how to like navigate glucose spikes. Because she basically says most adults in the world, we're in complete glucose dysregulation. It's making us sick. It's making us tired. It's giving us bad sleep. It's like a life-changing book.
So now we're starting every meal with vegetables.
Yeah, having veggies before you eat.
Yeah.
Short version for anyone listening, you eat your veggies first, then you eat your protein and your fat, and then you eat your carbs last. And that slows the uptake of glucose in your body so that you're not crashing and burning all day. And if you do nothing else, have a savoury breakfast and eat greens before you eat anything. And even when I go out now for dinner, I always get a green starter. So I'll just be like, get a side of broccolini, eat that first and then eat your meal. I feel so much better.
Yeah. And actually, let's do a shout out to Kemi's book, because I know this is one you've like finished within like a day and it's had a big impact already.
Yeah, it's Kemi, who's an amazing author, keynote speaker that we met at Tina Towers' retreat in Uluru, and she wrote a beautiful book called The Gift of Asking. And it's all about how when you ask for what you really want and need, you actually give a gift to the other person.
Yeah.
You know, particularly like in a relationship, say, people actually want to give you what you want, but they're not mind readers. And like chapter 3, mind readers, and then it just said there are none, and that was the whole chapter. But it's so true. You know, because we're just often like, we'll just be passive and like, you know, they should know what I want, and people don't know what you want. And so when you ask, you give yourself a gift, you give them a gift. Yeah, and it's been a really good book.
And I love that example you used of even like you had the book on there, you're reading it in the aeroplane, and then you were in Brizzy and someone offered to drive you to the Gold Coast.
Yeah, which was so nice. They were going
Super
that way.
nice.
And the old me would have gone, yeah, thanks so much. But actually all I wanted to do, we just spent 4 days at this conference. I was really tired, and I actually just wanted to sit on the train by myself, make a few calls, do some journaling. And I thought I'm going to have to like put a lot of energy out for the next hour talking to someone. So yeah, Kemi's words like straight away were like, no, ask for what you want. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. I'm actually going to do this. And the person was like, great, awesome, no worries.
Yeah. I think especially for women where sometimes we can be a little bit more passive with the answers, it just gives you the right.
Yeah, well, we don't ask what we want, then we get annoyed at the person for not giving us what we want. It's like kind of mad, isn't it?
If you had to be in a reality TV show, what would it be?
Well, when I was single, The Bachelorette, but only if I was The Bachelorette. I'd be like elbowing out the other girls on another show, because you know me, I'm quite competitive, so I'd probably like look terrible on it. They'd like cast me as the villain.
You would not be the villain. What is a life hack that you love that not many people might know about? I think I might know yours.
Oh, what is it?
Solara.
Yeah, Solara. This is something else we learned from Tina Tower, when she was just like, I hate cooking. Like, it's not worth my time. I just get meal delivery. And so Solara is like a vegan meal delivery service, and it's really healthy and it's really delicious and saves me hours in a week. So I'm loving that now. And I think I felt really guilty to begin with. I was like, well, if I don't know how to cook and do, you know, be a domestic goddess, I'm not a real woman kind of thing.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? You do though feel like that, don't you?
Yeah.
Particularly with growing up with a mum who's an amazing cook, and it's like just, but she loves it.
Yeah.
And I realised, I don't have to love it, it's fine. And I still think it's good to be handy in the kitchen and know a few things.
Yeah. But also like working out what you want to cook for that week, going to the supermarket, buying it, taking it home, chopping it up, cooking it.
Cleaning.
Eating it. Eating it takes like 10 seconds.
And then eating it when it's not very good. And then like, what was that meme we saw the other day? It's like,
pad thai.
I just spent like $64 on all the ingredients to make a really crappy pad thai when I could have just bought a pad thai for $30. I was like, yeah, that's the story of my life.
So
I put all this effort in. I made you that stir fry the other day.
Was so bad.
And I spent so much money on the ingredients, and it was so bad.
It was so bad.
Chicken breast, don't use it in a stir fry. Anyway,
That's another life hack. There you go. Chicken breast, don't leave it on stir
Use
fry.
thigh fillet.
And I would have thought that is where the podcast ends.
Yes.
But thank you so much, Bri. Where can people find you online?
Well, on the gram is where I spend way too much time. Briony, Briony_Benjamin. Find me there.
Also, if you want a bit of a lol, Brian, I started a TikTok channel like 2 years ago.
Yeah, and then we would fight too much because we couldn't get the dance moves together.
I could never get the dance move right.
I didn't want to say it, but yeah, I was quite good. You were a bit slow on the moves.
Just do this. We did one once where we had to pretend to be fishes. And I just could not get it right, apparently.
This was during COVID. We moved in with our mum and dad, and your twin, our other sister Rihanna, was like, I'm definitely not moving home, like you guys. And we're just at home making these ridiculous TikToks. But anyway.
One did go viral.
5 million. We got like 5 million views overnight. It was crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. It wasn't.
Check it out. Benji's sisters on TikTok. It's ridiculous.
Last week thing. All right, thanks, baby.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on.